This page is the front cover of 64 magazine issue 37, proudly declaring itself Britain's best N64 magazine. The main focus is an exclusive look at Mario Party 2, featuring colourful character art of Mario dressed as a cowboy, Yoshi, Toad and a star, all ready for some board game action. There's also prominent mention of Zelda 2, specifically featuring a screenshot from Ocarina of Time and directing readers to page 8. The cover highlights coverage of several other notable N64 titles, including Battlezone, Castlevania 2, referencing Dracula being back, and the hugely influential Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, promising Half-Pipe Heaven. Smaller mentions include Hydro Thunder, Hercules, Excitebike, and Kirby, with promises of latest picks. There's also a free Turok, Rage Wars guide mentioned, and a complete solution for Vigilante 8-2 ND Offense. A classic lineup of games for the N64, promising plenty to read about inside. This page is an advert for 3Do's battle tanks, Global Assault, showing a striking silhouette of a soldier on a tank. It highlights a March 2000 release, and quotes Nintendo Power, calling it one of the best multiplayer games. This page is the contents for issue 37, highlighting major articles on Mario Party 2, Zelda, Majora's Mask, and Castlevania, Legacy of Darkness, alongside features marking the magazine's 3 years and exploring games stuck in development. This page is a preview of Hercules, the legendary journeys for the Nintendo 64. It covers the upcoming adventure game, based on the popular TV series, following Hercules and his companions Iolaus and Serena on a quest across ancient Greece to stop Aeschylus. The game is noted for letting you control multiple characters, each with unique abilities, Hercules with his strength, Iolaus for climbing, and Serena using a bow. The article mentions, the game takes inspiration from the design of Zelda. Screenshots show the characters in various environments and encountering mythical creatures like a Cyclops, Minotaur, Centaur, and a fiery lava beast, as well as some familiar faces from the show like Aphrodite and Salmonius. It highlights the game's potential to ease the wait for the next Zelda title. Published by Titus, it was set for a summer release. This game did indeed come out on the N64 in 2000. This page features a preview of the next Legend of Zelda game, initially referred to here as Mask of Mudula, the follow-up to the absolute masterpiece Ocarina of Time. It covers the basic plot, where Link travels to an alternate version of Hyrule to save Epona and somehow stop the moon from crashing. The big new gimmick they're highlighting is the masks Link can wear, giving him different abilities, like turning into a Zora to swim or a Deku Scrub to glide, as seen in the screenshots. There's also a mysterious, scary mask shown that they're speculating about. Nintendo published it, of course, and while Japan was getting it in spring, we in the UK had to wait until December, which felt like an age back then, but it was worth it when it eventually landed as Majora's Mask. The screenshots show Link in his different forms, and some of the strange enemies and environments you encounter. This page covers a preview of Hydro Thunder, Midway's arcade hit, making its way to the N64. It's highlighted as bringing some much-needed water racing action to the console, sitting alongside the likes of Wave Race, Diddy Kong Racing, and Micro Machines. The preview makes it clear this isn't a simulation but an over-the-top, white-knuckle experience with loads of turbo boosts, crazy courses, huge jumps and drops. There are 12 tracks in total, packed with bizarre elements like waterless tunnels. Graphically, the preview notes the game will utilize the expansion pack for higher resolution and cleaner visuals, aiming for a smooth experience barring the waves themselves. The water effects are particularly praised, with reflections adding to the atmosphere, although the graphics aren't quite up to the standard set by Wave Race. Despite this, the levels are detailed, helping to create that full arcade racing feel, with early levels featuring helicopter jumps and waterfall leaps. It also mentions a 2-player mode, which would have been a good laugh back then. Warrington Me. The publisher is Midway, and the UK release was set for April. While it wasn't a stunner graphically compared to some N64 heavyweights, it certainly delivered on the pure arcade fun factor, which is what Hydro Thunder was all about. It did indeed release on the N64 in 2000, and was a decent port of the arcade game. This page previews 2 upcoming N64 titles. First up is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, described as bringing ultimate radical high tricks to the console. It builds on the success of the PlayStation version, offering 9 courses, a full roster of pro skaters, all the moves, and even 2-player modes. The core idea involves skating around arenas, completing tasks like collecting skate letters and finding hidden tapes, all while grinding rails to a punk soundtrack. The preview notes the N64 version looks promising, aiming to deliver that arcade feeling. Tony Hawk himself is highlighted in a separate box, mentioning his status, and the famous 900-degree spin. It was indeed a cracking port, and one of the best games on the system, capturing the feel perfectly. The other preview covers Kirby 64, noting it had a long development cycle before settling on its final form as a pseudo 3D platformer. The big draw is Kirby's ability to swallow enemies and absorb their powers, with the added depth of combining powers for different effects, a neat mechanic that really sets it apart. Screenshots show Kirby in various colorful environments, including a boss fight and preparing a unique attack. The preview mentions it was due out in Japan in spring, and while there was no confirmed UK date at the time, it did eventually arrive later in the year. It was a solid, charming platformer. Maybe not revolutionary but plenty of fun, with that power-combining system. This page previews 2 upcoming dirt bike games for the N64. First up is Excitebike 64, Nintendo's take on bike racing, which was really anticipated. The preview highlights its ability to grab attention with its variety of surfaces across 6 courses. A key feature discussed is the use of the analog stick for performing mid-air stunts, which felt great in practice. It also mentions the promising creator rider and track editor, giving it real longevity. At the time, the UK release date wasn't confirmed, but it was well worth the wait when it arrived. The track editor alone was a game-changer. The second preview covers Jeremy McGrath's Supercross 2000. This one's presented as a more arcade-style dirt biking game compared to others. It features 4-player split-screen, which was excellent for multiplayer fun, diverse indoor and outdoor tracks, and supports high-resolution visuals with the expansion pack. The release date is noted as the 28th of April. While decent, especially for getting mates round, Excitebike 64 arguably had the edge on the pure bike physics and features like the track editor, but this was a solid option too. Luckily. Beyond the game previews, the page is dominated by a large advert for N64 games and consoles for sale. This page features a preview of the highly anticipated rare title, Perfect Dark. The preview discusses the game's unfortunate delay, pushing the UK release back to mid-May. A major point highlighted is that the full Perfect Dark experience, including crucial features like the single-player campaign and most multiplayer options, requires the N64 expansion pack. Without it, you're limited to just basic deathmatch, which was a real shame for players who didn't have the accessory. The preview also notes the dropping of the Game Boy camera option, originally planned for deathmatch opponents. Despite these setbacks, Perfect Dark in its full, expansion pack-enhanced state was expected to be brilliant, especially the deathmatch supporting up to 12 players with bots, even described as potentially better than GoldenEye. Screenshots show intense first-person action, different environments like futuristic interiors and outdoor levels, character models including aliens, and even a comical death animation screenshot. It was definitely the game everyone was looking forward to in 2000, and it certainly lived up to the hype once the full version was finally in hand. This page covers various gaming news and rumors. The editor is departing but praises Perfect Dark. Pokemon fans rejoice with the UK release of Pokemon Stadium and the transfer pack, enabling Game Boy battles on N64. Rare's Squirrel game, now titled Conker's Bad Fur Day, underwent a major redesign. Unfortunately, Harvest Moon, Trich Hyperbike and Rally Masters were cancelled for the UK. Acclaim announced the end of N64 support after Turok 3. Shadow of Oblivion. Midway is bringing over us titles like Hydro Thunder, Cruisin' Exotica, Rush 2049, and Ready 2 Rumble 2. THQ is also bringing a Scooby-Doo game to the N64. Finally, there's a glimpse into the future with news about Nintendo's next console, codenamed Dolphin, GameCube. This page features the regular Game Watch section, giving us a look ahead at expected N64 game release dates, with UK titles highlighted, and some screenshots of games like Blues Brothers 64, Taz Express, Pokemon Stadium, Winback, Daikatana and StarCraft scattered about. There's also a look at the Evolution GeForce Tilt, a rather unique tilt-sensitive peripheral you strap to your hand while holding a separate gun-like controller. Sounds a bit fiddly, especially with buttons missing, but it's certainly an interesting idea for controlling games. Additionally, there are adverts for Dreamcast magazine and the Cheats Unlimited service, which offers tips for N64 games among others, plus the latest 64 magazine charts showing the top-selling games. The next page is the letters section, where readers air their views on the N64 scene. We've got chatter about game reviews, including a chap who didn't like the low score for Carmageddon 64, and discussions about the future of consoles with the upcoming Dolphin project. There's also a look back at some all-time classic games like GoldenEye, Super Mario 64, and Zelda, mixed with debates about gameplay versus graphics, and missed opportunities for titles like Cannon Fodder, or an N64 DAR-type shooter. Readers also mentioned their Christmas game hauls, listing Rainbow Six, Jet Force Gemini, Super Smash Bros., and Michael Owen's WLS 2000. A letter raised concerns about N64 games, like Perfect Dark, and the 64DD being hard to find or delayed, touching on the system shelf space shrinking compared to the Dreamcast. The star prize this month is a hefty bundle of N64 peripherals, like steering wheels and memory cards. We also saw artwork for Jet Force Gemini, Donkey Kong, and a GoldenEye character, along with a screenshot from Cannon Fodder, and a look at the 64D unit itself. Someone also asked about skateboarding games, and Tony Hawk's Skateboarding was confirmed as the main one. This article commemorates the magazine's 3rd anniversary, coinciding with the N64s in the UK. It reflects on the magazine's evolution from its debut, including early news like a Resident Evil game for the N64. The piece features Bet You Didn't Know Facts, revealing an alternative name and a memorable rare interview. Did we say that? Quotes revisit past predictions, such as an overly optimistic Conker's Quest release date. The article highlights 5 games that shook the world, including Super Mario 64, praised for revolutionizing 3D platformers, and GoldenEye, celebrated for its multiplayer and successful movie license. Visuals include screenshots of Mario on a cake and iconic game scenes, alongside a section on staff favorites. This article revisits the magazine's history, detailing key periods. It covers the arrival of a new staff writer and the dark time, issues 13-16, marked by a decline in quality. The rebirth, around issue 17-22, brought a redesign and a surge in quality games like F-Zero X, Body Harvest, and The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time. The article mentions the build-up to issue 30 and the anticipation for Perfect Dark. It also discusses E3's reality. The games that shook the world feature spotlights F1 World Grand Prix and IS-98. A personal best section includes contributions from staff members, highlighting games like Team Fortress Classic, Zelda, GoldenEye, StarCraft, and Quake 2, showcasing their broader gaming interests. Screenshots of F1 World Grand Prix and IS Section 88 are included. This page features a graph charting the review scores from 64 Magazine's first 36 issues, showing the highest and lowest rated games in each issue. It gives a great overview of the quality of games reviewed over that period. You can see the real highlights like Super Mario 64, GoldenEye, Banjo-Kazooie, and The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time hitting the high 90s, pushing the top line right up. It shows how those amazing games really set the standard, fitting with the magazine's rebirth period where quality titles like IS-98 and F-Zero X also scored highly, as discussed previously. But it also shows the other end of the spectrum, charting some truly dire releases. Games like Superman 64 pulling in a shocking 14%, Clay Fighter 63 and a third scraping 13%, and others such as Wily Country Club, WCW Nitro, and The Glory of St. Andrews scoring in the low 20s. It really illustrates how the N64 library had its absolute classics, alongside some regrettable duds. There's even SimCity 2000 listed with a score, which is interesting as that N64 version was ultimately cancelled. Seeing the range between the absolute best and the absolute worst in each issue really tells the story of the console's varied catalogue. This page of 64 Magazine details internal staff changes, including new editors Mark Shufflebottom and Mike Richardson. It highlights the magazine's brutal game critiques, with quotes like, "Ground into dog food," Mortal Kombat Trilogy, and "As much fun as removing your fingernails with sandpaper." Superman, reflecting low scores. Mark Shufflebottom's personal bests details his life's highlights and disappointments around the time. The page prominently features an advertisement for South Park Rally, showcasing its racing action and featuring characters from the show. Finally, 5 Games That Shook the World analyzes The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, and includes brief, negative looks at games previously critiqued in the Did We Say That section, solidifying their poor reception. This article explores the lost games of the Nintendo 64, categorizing them by their likelihood of release: red, dead, amber, missing, and green, supposedly coming. Several titles met a grim fate. Rev Limit and Robotech, plagued by studio implosions, are likely gone. Freak Boy, a platformer, was indefinitely held. Nintendo's Mother 3, intended for the 64DD, and Super Mario RPG, also for the 64DD, faced endless delays, as did Simcopter. Conker's Quest evolved into Conker's Bad Fur Day, Kirby's Air Ride morphed into Kirby 64. The Crystal Shards. StarCraft, a PC conversion, was delayed. Jest, a 3D adventure, disappeared after a buyout. Jungle Emperor Leo, an anime adaptation, vanished after a single video presentation. This article paints a picture of the challenges and ultimate failures of several planned N64 titles. Several N64 games languished in development hell. Konami's Survivor, Day 1 was cancelled. Psygnosis's Ott and Fox's Die Hard also failed to release. Looney Tunes, Space Race and Wild Metal Country moved to other platforms. Harrier 2000 was permanently halted by a lawsuit. Nintendo's Rika vanished, while Activision's X-Men Beat-em-up was cancelled. Nintendo's Eternal Darkness shifted to GameCube. Midway's Mortal Kombat Special Forces was outright scrapped. Daikatana, despite PC troubles, eventually saw an N64 release, albeit different. Rare's Perfect Dark and Banjo-Tooie successfully released. Infogram's Duck Dodgers continued development. This page features the results of the Millennium Games Awards, a reader poll compiled from votes across Paragon Publishing's magazines to find the top 100 games from over 20 years of video game history, covering all formats. Featured prominently is a large image of James Bond from the absolute classic N64 game, GoldenEye 007. The text explains how readers nominated hundreds of different titles across every imaginable machine. The next page reveals the massive winner of the Millennium Games Award, GoldenEye, taking the top spot in the Greatest Games Ever poll. It wasn't just a win, it completely dominated the voting. There's an interview with the team at Rare, who discuss how honored and surprised they were by just how many votes it received. You can see some classic screenshots from the game, the man himself, Bond, and a photo of the talented Rare team back in the day. There are also sections detailing the N64 rankings from the overall poll and a list of N64 exclusive titles. The right side is promoting a solutions guide packed with maps, hints, and cheats for games like Donkey Kong 64, A Bug's Life, and the end of Jet Force Gemini, featuring the characters from those games. This page launches into the magazine's main review section, prominently featuring the in-depth look at Castlevania, Legacy of Darkness. It details the game with screenshots showing off the visuals and gameplay, using the magazine's unique rating system involving N64 controllers to score graphics, audio, gameplay, and challenge before giving an overall percentage. The page also explains exactly what all those rating boxes mean, including the 9info box for basic game details like player count and expansion/Rumble Pack support, the $64,000 question listing the game's good and bad points, memory options, and details on PAL performance and where to get imports. It clearly lays out the meaning behind the percentage scores, from the top-tier gold medal award, down to the world of crap. Beyond the main Castlevania review, it highlights other games covered in this issue's reviews, including Mario Party 2, Battlezone, ECW Hardcore Revolution, Battletanks 2, and Cyber Tiger, listing the pages where you can find their full reviews. There's also a section explaining the N64 controller buttons and what the various rating categories like graphics, audio, gameplay, challenge, overall, and the soundbite summary actually represent. This page gives us the full review of Castlevania, Legacy of Darkness. It dives into this prequel story, set before the first N64 game, introducing new playable characters, particularly focusing on Cornell the Man-Beast. The review points out that while there's a new storyline and some fresh locations, much of the game, including enemies and even bosses, will feel very familiar if you played the original Castlevania title. Screenshots are scattered throughout, showing off encounters with skeletons, lizard men, and highlighting sections like the battle against a water dragon and a boss fight. Despite the reuse of assets, the review mentions the story follows Cornell as he tries to rescue his sister Ada, leading him to Dracula's castle. It notes that camera issues from the first game persist. Essentially, it's a look at a game that takes the familiar groundwork and adds new characters and a prequel plot, but doesn't stray too far from what came before. This page continues the review of Castlevania, Legacy of Darkness, giving us more details on the gameplay mechanics and sections. It highlights collecting power-ups, dubbed Power Slave, which improve your attacks and their visual effects, going from standard blue to more powerful colors like red. We get a look at the returning skeleton boss in the Dust and Bones section, who's apparently back with a few new tricks. The main text here declares that Legacy of Darkness is what the first game always should have been, suggesting it addresses some issues, particularly mentioning improved graphics and cutscenes thanks to the expansion pack, though it notes the camera and controls can still be a bit fiddly, especially with platforming. There's also a section on Cornell's of Wolf and Man ability, where collecting red crystals lets you transform into a wolf to dish out damage. Finally, the shipwrecked part describes the game's opening sequence involving a ghost ship and a sea monster, before leading to Dracula's castle. Plenty of screenshots show off the action, the returning boss, the wolf transformation, and different environments like the ship and the familiar castle corridors. This page continues the look at Castlevania, Legacy of Darkness, highlighting its replay value with 4 characters including the new werewolf boy Cornell, returning favorites Carrie and Reinhardt, and newcomer Henry with a shotgun. Despite these additions, the review argues there's little reason to buy it if you played the first N64 Castlevania, describing it as largely a rehash or successful remake that reuses most of the content. While it's seen as a superior game to the original, it's noted as a glorified platformer with basic puzzles. It's suggested as the perfect entry point if you're new to the franchise. The review includes ratings for graphics, audio, gameplay, and challenge, leading to an overall score of 86%. A second opinion echoes the sentiment of Deja Vu, calling it a waste of money if you own the first game, and finds it enjoyable but still fiddly and a bit dated now, which ties back to earlier comments about the camera and controls. There's also a look at the long history of the Castlevania series, touching on its move to 3D and appearance on various classic consoles. Screenshots show off a boss battle and classic 2D Castlevania scenes, alongside the N64 game. This page is a review of Mario Party 2 for the N64. It arrived in the UK in June and builds on the success of the original. The story is pretty thin, basically revolving around who gets to name the board game world, which obviously Bowser wants for himself. The big draw is the board game structure, where players roll dice and move around collecting coins and aiming for stars, with a minigame played after every round. One notable cosmetic change is that the characters dress up in costumes fitting the theme of the different boards, like Cowboy Mario on the cover. Compared to the first game, there are fewer main boards to start with, just 5, but they've packed in more minigames this time around, 64 in total. The gameplay itself is largely the same as the original. Nintendo wisely didn't mess too much with a winning formula. The minigames are generally simple, using just the analog stick and maybe one button, and are quick affairs. The review sees it as a slightly improved version of the first game. The screenshots show off some of the minigames like Koopa's Seaside Soiree with the bumper cars, Bowser's Big Blast where you pick a fuse, and a peek at the Mystery Land board where the characters are in Explorer gear. It's still very much a party game designed for multiple players to jump into. This page continues the review of Mario Party 2, really digging into what's on offer. You get a look at the 5 main boards here: Pirate Land with its cannonballs, the Wild West antics of Western Land, the ancient mysteries of Mystery Land, the futuristic Spaceland, and the spooky Horrorland. Each board has its own theme, right down to the costumes the characters wear, which is a nice touch. They show off some of the mini-games too, like Bowser's powerful satellite weapon that can zero out your coin count if you're caught in the blast, picking items from the shop, or a familiar bowling minigame that's back. There's even a shot of Bowser himself turning up to cause trouble and steal coins. The main review reckons it's a bit better than the first game, especially as a group game, but still feels like more of the same, and suggests it might be better off rented if you've already played the original extensively. However, the second opinion completely disagrees, calling it a winner, particularly with mates, and advises trading in the first game for this one. Overall, it gets a solid 81% rating, scoring well across graphics, audio, gameplay and challenge, although the soundbite mentions the audio is only slightly better than before. It's clearly positioned as a definitive party game for the N64. Battlezone: Rise of the Black Dogs is a first-person shooter / real-time strategy game for the N64. Players battle for resources in space, commanding units, building defenses, and piloting vehicles equipped with high-tech weapons. The game features modes like Arcade, Pilot, and Commander with varying difficulties. Gameplay involves intense combat, resource gathering, and strategic deployment of units like tanks and turrets. Vehicles can hover and jump. Up to 4 players are supported. The review praises its unique blend of gameplay, despite criticism of the graphics and aiming. A last resort tactic allows players to eject from destroyed tanks. Released in the UK in March 2000, the game offered a unique experience. Battlezone: Rise of the Black Dogs receives a mixed review. Gameplay is praised for its strategic shooter mix, aided by auto-aim, though aiming can be challenging. Graphics are heavily criticized, resembling an N64 game, even with the expansion pack. Sound is deemed acceptable, but not exceptional. Screenshots showcase combat, vehicles, explosions, the strategy view, and split-screen multiplayer. A control diagram explains the N64 controller's functions. Tips highlight the commander mode for troop orders and the sniper rifle for on-foot combat. A second opinion acknowledges the game's quality, but notes potential seasickness from visuals and movement. The overall score is 79%, with specific scores given for graphics, audio, gameplay, and challenge. The summary highlights good gameplay, appalling graphics, indicating the visuals are the game's major flaw. This page is a review of ECW Hardcore Revolution. Published by Acclaim, this wrestling title uses the same engine found in their WWF Attitude game, offering a familiar feel. The review notes the game focuses more on realistic action and violence than elaborate storylines, featuring a large roster of ECW talent, including names like Jerry Lynn, Rhino, and Dawn Marie. Players can engage in various match types, from standard 1-on-1 bouts to elimination matches, 3-on-1 contests, and even a substantial 30-man battle royal. Screenshots on the page show examples of these different types of matches and the character models in action. The review touches upon the game's attempt to capture ECW's reputation for being more extreme. Although the title suggests it might not fully deliver on the hardcore promise compared to the real-life promotion, it's certainly a game aimed at fans of the more intense style of wrestling that ECW was known for at the time. This page continues the review of Acclaim's ECW Hardcore Revolution for the Nintendo 64. It highlights some of the key wrestlers featured, including Rob Van Dam, Just Incredible, Sabu, and Tommy Dreamer, giving a brief introduction to each. The review delves into the gameplay, noting the focus on violent bouts and specific match types designed to capture the ECW style, such as the barbed wire match. However, a significant point raised is the game's strong resemblance to Acclaim's previous wrestling title, WWF Attitude. The review explicitly states that Hardcore Revolution feels like a reskin of Attitude, with many features, menus, and even character creation options being practically identical. Screenshots display in-game action, including a Jason vs. Sabu match and scenes from other bouts like Raven vs. Chetty, Jerry Lynn vs. Rhino, and Nova vs. Spike. The control scheme is laid out, showing the button mapping for actions like punching, kicking, and dodging. The page also lists alternatives, namely WWF WrestleMania 2000 and WWF Attitude, referencing their previous magazine review scores. Finally, the review concludes with ratings for graphics, audio, gameplay, and challenge, culminating in an overall score of 64%. This page features a review of Battle Tanks, Global Assault on the N64. It's the follow-up to the original Battle Tanks, which famously never saw an official release here in the UK. The story continues a few years after the first game, involving Griffin's son, dubbed The Edge, in an Akita-style plot to save the world once more from a new gang. The core appeal, as highlighted here, is the sheer scale of destruction. You're driving a tank through various locations across America and Europe, and the game lets you level buildings and landmarks like the Houses of Parliament and the White House, which is quite something. The review mentions this can get a bit chow-tackic but is definitely fun. Screenshots show the tank action, highlighting the destruction of environments and the in-game minimap. There's a note about smoke potentially obstructing the view. One screenshot points out the guided missile as a useful weapon. Another mentions driving through underground tunnels for shortcuts and power-ups. The review summary points out the huge explosions, mass destruction, and 4-player mode as positives. On the downside, it suggests the idea isn't entirely inspired and notes potential difficulty with controls and fogging effects. The game requires the controller pack for saving progress. Battle Tanks, Global Assault is a destructive tank combat game featuring various vehicles like the Goliath and Moto Tank. The review emphasizes the chaotic gameplay, showcasing swarm rockets, turbo power-ups, and physical damage representation. Multiplayer offers diverse modes like Deathmatch and Tank Wars, including objectives centered on protecting or destroying a queen figure. The game's missions involve destruction and collection, though allies can be unreliable. Praised for its improved graphics and smooth controls, the game can get hectic, with vague objectives. Screenshots highlight destruction and friendly fire incidents. The review includes the control layout, recommends similar games, and provides a rating breakdown leading to an 88% overall score. The final verdict calls it a fun blast for both solo and multiplayer experiences, and a worthy successor to the original. Cyber Tiger revitalizes golf with humor and action, featuring power-ups, a split-screen battle mode, and a betting game. The game's colorful, cartoonish graphics and well-implemented analog controls enhance playability. While offering a driving range and overhead views, the review criticizes the limited 3 courses and dull background music. Despite these drawbacks, the game's intuitive swing mechanics, sound effects, and unique challenges like the Tiger Club Loss Challenge are praised. The Ninfo box confirms 4-player support, controller pack requirement, and EA Sports as publisher. Comparisons to other N64 golf titles are included. Cyber Tiger receives an 83% rating, with a second opinion highlighting its rarity as a good N64 golf game. Ultimately, it's deemed a fun golf game with enjoyable features. This page is all about getting an edge, presenting the Cheat Central section, packed with tips and tricks for several N64 favorites. You've got pages here covering Battle Tanks, Global Assault, Resident Evil 2, Vigilante 8, Second Offense, and Turok, Rage Wars, listing ways to unlock stuff or gain advantages. There are also sections for Castlevania, Legacy of Darkness, and Toy Story 2. Scattered amongst the text are screenshots from Turok and Castlevania, plus character art for the Toy Story Alien. It's rounded off with a large advert for a premium phone line service called Cheats Unlimited. This page continues the Cheat Central section, offering more ways to get an edge in various N64 titles. For Duke Nukem 0 Hour, you've got cheats covering different modes, character skins, difficulty settings, infinite rifle ammo, and unlocking extra multiplayer characters. There's an in-game screenshot showing the first-person view. Armorines, Project Swarm gets a mention with level skip passwords listed, accompanied by some fantastic artwork of one of the alien creatures you face. Finally, there's a big section dedicated to the Explorer Ultimate Cheat cartridge, presenting codes for a huge array of different Alien 64 games. An image of the cartridge itself is included. The next page is all about the Score Zone. This is where players submitted their top times and scores from various N64 games to compete against each other. It's fantastic to see the dedication players put in to shave milliseconds or find every last collectible. This month's winner is James Iyer, who absolutely dominated across a load of titles, getting amazing results in games like GoldenEye, Quake 64, and Banjo-Kazooie. The page lists scores for games like Legend of Zelda, Shadows of the Empire, and GoldenEye, showing some seriously impressive times for completing levels or challenges. Quake 64 maps are featured, with players tearing through them in record time. You've also got scores for Banjo-Kazooie levels and jiggies, and speedruns for Beetle Adventure racing tracks. Smaller sections cover scores in Yoshi's Story, Donkey Kong 64 subgames, Jet Force Gemini Racing, World Driver Championship, Mario 64 coins, and Cruise N USA. There's a section called Enter the Zone, explaining how players can get involved by sending in their own best scores or times. Finally, they're calling out for new names needed, asking for scores in games like Roadsters, Star Wars, Episode I, Racer, Quake 2, Jet Force Gemini, Donkey Kong 64 subgames, World Driver Championship, and Duke Nukem 0 Hour. The page shows screenshots from some of these games, including racing action from Roadsters and Star Wars, Episode I, Racer, a shot from Quake 2, Jet Force Gemini's visuals, and Duke Nukem 0 Hour gameplay. Proper competitive stuff. This page is packed full of more Score Zone goodness, showcasing players' best efforts across a whole different range of N64 titles. You've got times listed here for Speed Demons in F-Zero X and Mario Kart 64, alongside fierce competition in Diddy Kong Racing and the flight combat of Star Wars, Rogue Squadron. Scores are also featured for Turok and Vigilante 8, showing high scores and survival challenges. You can see records for Fighters Destiny and Tetrasphere, plus results for racing games like Snowboard Kids and Wave Race. There are also sections for Scars, Chameleon Twist, and more Star Wars Episode I, Racer times. There are screenshots dotted about, giving a glimpse of the action in F-Zero X, Diddy Kong Racing, Mario Kart 64, Snowboard Kids, Vigilante 8, and Episode I, Racer. It also touches on a Score Zone challenge for Ready 2 Rumble Boxing, and promotes a rather fetching steering wheel accessory for the N64. This page is a fantastic playing guide for Vigilante 8, Second Offense, following on nicely from seeing some high scores for the first game previously. It dives into some key aspects you need to master if you want to dominate the arena. First up, it breaks down the different types of propulsion available, showing off the hoverpods, hydrofloater, and skis and treads, explaining how they affect handling across different terrains, whether it's skimming water or tackling snow. There's a good screenshot showing a car kitted out with the hydrofloater add-on, looking ready to make a splash. Then, it details the arsenal you'll be wielding, covering various weapons like the bruiser cannon, crater maker, buckshot, and interceptor missiles. It gives a brief rundown of what each weapon does, from bouncing shells off the ground with the ricochet, to launching homing missiles. There are smaller shots here too, showing the visual effects of some of the ordnance like missiles and rockets. It also touches on the cheating varmint section, letting you know there are plenty of codes to mess about with, whether you want faster reloads, different physics, or even unlock hidden modes and vehicles. Essential reading for anyone looking to bend the rules a bit. Overall, it's a solid overview of the game's core mechanics and features. This guide for Vigilante 8, Second Offense provides an overview of the game's weapons, characters, and missions. It details the various offensive tools, including Stampede rockets, Roadrunner, and different roadkill mines, Seeker, Bear Hug, Cactus Patch, alongside explosive brimstone burner weapons. The guide also covers the game's campaign, outlining missions across diverse locations, from desert battles to pipeline skirmishes. Objectives involve collecting items, protecting key locations, and eliminating enemy coyotes. Finally, the guide introduces playable characters, including Sheila with her Wonder Wagon and Tantrum Gun, John Torque in the Thunderbolt with Wheel of Fortune, the Flying All-Star Trio on their Dakota Stunt Cycle, Houston with her Towhook, and Convoy in the Livingston Truck with the Rolling Thunder. Each character profile includes vehicle stats and special ability descriptions, alongside screenshots for player reference. This guide provides an in-depth look at two factions in Vigilante 8, Second Offense, the Coyotes and the Drifters. The Coyotes are introduced with profiles for Dallas 13, Nina Loco, Mollo, Obake, and Lord Clyde, detailing their vehicles, stats, and special weapons. Their missions span multiple states and involve objectives like collecting items and destroying targets. The Drifters are presented with astronaut Bob O, the Garbage Man, Agent R. Chase, Chassis Blue, and Padre Destino, including similar details about their vehicles and weaponry. Their missions also take place across numerous states, focusing on tasks like collecting resources, evading enemies, and eliminating targets. Screenshots showcase environments like a missile silo and a nuclear plant, highlighting the varied battlegrounds. This guide aims to prepare players for the challenges of both factions. This page continues the playing guide for Vigilante 8, Second Offense, focusing on two distinct battle arenas. The arid Arizona Meteor Crater offers gully ambushes and sniper points, with the guide highlighting the map key, a top tip for long distances, and points of interest like the Donut Shop, Sheriff, Mine Shortcut, gas pumps, and the Meteor Crater itself, with corresponding screenshots and a map layout showing item locations. Louisiana's Ghastly Bayou is a tricky swampland haunted by spirits, detailing map items, a tip about targeting enemies, and points like the Gator Cage, Floodgates, the House/Tomb Teleport, and the Cemetery, also shown with screenshots and a map. The guide also introduces bonus characters unlocked through completing the game, specifically profiling Dave's Coltsman and his slow but powerful Xanadu RV with the UFO Invasion special weapon, and Dusty Earth with his versatile Wapiti-4 WD and the disorienting Hawk that settles special weapon, detailing their stats and providing character art. This page continues the guide for Vigilante 8, Second Offense, covering the Florida launch site and the Pennsylvania steel mill. The Florida section highlights the wide-open beach good for long-range weapons, warning about the military presence. It details points of interest like the rocket engine and wind tunnels with screenshots, and shows the item locations on the map. There's a tip about avoiding sharks in the water. Over in Pennsylvania, the steel mill offers a debris-strewn industrial battleground. The guide points out how to use the train and teleport into the tunnel, warns about the molten steel, and shows how to use magnetic mines and interact with the smelting room and coal mounds, all with corresponding screenshots, and the map overlay showing where to find pickups. The top tip here suggests using high ground for better range and accuracy. The page also profiles two more characters. Boogie drives the Marathon, described as a hit-and-run specialist with low armor but good speed, using the devastating disco ball special weapon, best used at close range. Sheila is also featured, known for the powerful Manta. This page continues the playing guide for Vigilante 8, Second Offense, Moving on to two more distinct locations. First up is California Pacific Harbor, a bustling docks area where it's vital to watch out for the heavy trucks. The guide points out useful spots like the depot for quick ocean access, the lighthouse providing armor, and the cranes that can help you get around or pull you from the water. It also notes that shooting the orange containers reveals hidden items, and you can restore armor by waiting at the way station. There's a screenshot for each of these points of interest, plus the map showing where all the pickups are scattered, color-coded, by type using the key provided. Then it's off to Utah Winter Games. This level is all about fighting on the ice, so getting those skis and treads is crucial for traction. The cable car and ski lift offer rides up the hill, and places to find weapons. You can risk the one-way bobsleigh run for prizes at the bottom, or hit the downhill ski run gates and claim victory at the winner's podium. The guide also mentions the jump, perfect for recreating Eddie the Eagle moments, and how to blast into the lodge to get onto the second-floor balcony for more pickups. Again, there are screenshots showing off these locations and the detailed map with item placements, using the same handy key. Both levels also feature a character artwork from the game. This guide explores two distinct levels in Vigilante 8, Second Offense. The Minnesota nuclear plant is a hazardous arena with radiation, electrical hazards, and deadly turbines. Key strategies include using the reactor for explosions, navigating tunnels and heavy water vents, avoiding transformers, and utilizing the main computer for armor upgrades. The guide features screenshots, a map, and a tip for balcony armor. It also showcases the character artwork for Houston. The Alaskan pipeline level combines land and sea combat. Players are advised to use pipeline ramps, avoid slowing oil pools, and killer whales. The oil rig offers weapons, and can be destroyed for more. The guide includes screenshots, a map, and a top tip about using the sea for tactical advantage. Moringtolo's character artwork is included. Both level guides utilize color-coded keys to identify important items and upgrades. This page is a special offer for Nintendo 64 game guides and books, including deals on Turok 2, Banjo-Kazooie, Zelda 64, Lilat Wars, Donkey Kong 64, and comprehensive as guides. There's also an offer on Nintendo 64 Gold, with a free memory card. This page is all about subscribing to 64 Magazine, featuring the mega deal where you could get a year's worth of issues plus a choice of classic N64 games such as GoldenEye, Mario Kart, and Banjo-Kazooie, along with essential guides for games like Zelda 64. You can also see Claire Redfield from Resident Evil 2, which had that incredible N64 port. The next page presents the Nindex, the magazine's comprehensive guide to every N64 game they've reviewed up to this point. It serves as a quick reference buyer's guide, detailing key information for each title like player count, and whether it supports the controller pack, rumble pack, and expansion pack. The page also lays out the different genres covered, and highlights the scoring system, noting that games scoring 90% or above earn the Sizzler Award, and 95% or above receive the coveted gold medal. Crucially, it features our top 10 list, showcasing the very best the N64 has to offer, with absolute classics like GoldenEye, Zelda, IS-98, and Resident Evil 2 sitting right up there, fitting nicely with what we saw on the previous page about the console's essential games. This N64 Buyer's Guide summarizes the magazine's game reviews, categorizing top titles by genre. Notable genre leaders include GoldenEye, Shoot 'em Ups, The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, Adventure, Super Mario 64, Platformers, and Super Smash Bros., Fighting. Screenshots showcase the best games visually. A Test of Time section revisits older games. Tonic Trouble's score dropped, while Michael Owen's WLS 2000 still holds up. Conversely, Michael Owen's Monster Truck Madness significantly declined in quality. Finally, Best of the Bits recommends essential accessories, including the official Nintendo controller, steering wheels, and the Datal 4 MB memory card for expanded saving. This page continues the buyer's guide, presenting the full Nindex. It lists loads of N64 games with their publisher, player count, console compatibility icons, the issue they were reviewed in, their score, and a brief comment. It's a handy quick reference for checking scores and finding reviews. Beyond the main index, they've broken down the top games in specific genres, based on those scores. You've got the best racing games, sports games, party/puzzle titles, and strategy/simulation games all ranked. They've even included a list of the worst games, which is a bit harsh but fair enough. Some absolute stinkers were released on the system. Finally, there's the most wanted section. They're looking forward to Perfect Dark, Rare's next big shooter after GoldenEye. Everyone was buzzing about that. Then there's the next Legend of Zelda game, which is mentioned as the continuing saga, but we all know now that was the Majora's Mask. Banjo-Tooie was also eagerly anticipated, the sequel to the brilliant Banjo-Kazooie. And a Resident Evil 0? That was just a rumor back then, mind you, but the thought of Resident Evil on 64 was exciting, though it never materialized on the console itself. This page teases the next issue of the magazine, which is clearly focused on Perfect Dark, Rare's highly anticipated follow-up to GoldenEye 007. It also includes the magazine's staff list and a load of adverts for games, peripherals, and online services from places like Special Reserve and UKGames.com. The next issue is due out on the 23rd of March.